The enigma of delayed action. Why do we start tomorrow? How many times have you caught yourself saying, "I'll start tomorrow"? That important task, that ambitious dream, that necessary change in your life. The promise echoes in your mind, a temporary relief, while action is once again pushed into an uncertain future. This is the enigma of delayed action, a persistent whisper that prevents us from taking the first step or continuing what we have already started. It is a phenomenon as common as breathing, a shadow that looms over students, professionals, artists, and dreamers. No matter how motivated or intelligent we are, procrastination reaches us, seducing us with the illusion that later will be a better, easier, less stressful moment. But the truth is, that later rarely comes without a cost: rising anxiety, missed opportunities, or the frustration of not seeing our potential fully realized. For a long time, procrastination was oversimplified, labeled as laziness, lack of discipline, or weakness of character. A moral flaw, perhaps. But that view is superficial and unfair. It ignores the complexity of a behavior that defies logic, because we know what is good for us, and yet we still sabotage ourselves. It's not simply a matter of wanting to do it, but of being able to do it, of crossing an invisible barrier that appears out of nowhere. Modern science, however, is beginning to uncover the deeper layers of this mystery. We have discovered that procrastination is not a character defect, but a complex psychological and neurological phenomenon, rooted in how our brain processes emotions, rewards, and threats. It is an intricate dance between the limbic system, responsible for emotions, and the prefrontal cortex, our center for planning and decision-making. It's about task aversion, the search for instant gratification, and the difficulty of dealing with discomfort. Understanding procrastination, therefore, is more than learning how to be productive. It is a journey of self-knowledge, an exploration of the internal mechanisms that either push us forward or paralyze us. It's not a battle against laziness, but a search for evidence-based strategies that allow us to renegotiate with our own brain, reprogram our responses, and free our potential. We are on the verge of unraveling this enigma, not to blame ourselves, but to empower ourselves, to transform "I'll start tomorrow" into "I'll start now." This is the promise: to dive into the depths of the science of procrastination, understand its roots, and discover the keys to overcoming it, step by step, turning inertia into deliberate, meaningful action. Prepare to rewrite your story with time. Underscore, 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 underscore. If procrastination is not mere laziness, what is actually happening inside our brain? We are the stage of a silent battle. On one side lies the limbic system, the oldest and most emotional part of our brain, craving immediate pleasure, comfort, and the avoidance of pain, reacting instinctively. On the other side rises the prefrontal cortex, the most evolved region, responsible for planning, impulse control, and long-term thinking. It is our rational self. Procrastination emerges from this conflict when the limbic desire for instant gratification hijacks the agenda of our frontal planner, diverting us from action. In this internal struggle, the limbic system often prevails in the short term. It seduces us with the promise of immediate relief, directing our attention toward distractions and easier tasks. The feeling of well-being that comes from postponing a difficult task, even if fleeting, is a powerful reinforcement. Our brain, always seeking efficiency, quickly learns that avoiding the initial discomfort of starting something complex can produce a small spike of pleasure. A vicious cycle is established, turning delay into a comfortable escape, even though it is harmful in the long run. And dopamine, the famous neurotransmitter, plays a crucial role. It's not just the pleasure hormone, but also the chemical behind motivation and anticipated reward. When we think of something that will bring instant gratification, a video, social media, or avoiding a task, our brain releases dopamine. This release generates a sensation of wanting, of expectation. The act of delaying and jumping into a distraction becomes chemically rewarding, strengthening the association between avoiding work and feeling good. Over time, this repeated cycle of delay plus reward shapes our neural pathways. What begins as an isolated choice becomes a pattern, a deeply rooted habit. The neural pathways that associate task discomfort with distraction reward grow stronger and more efficient. Our brain builds a shortcut, a preferred route toward procrastination, making it increasingly difficult to resist. This is not a moral flaw, but a learned and biochemically reinforced behavior that manifests as an almost irresistible force during moments of decision. Understanding this complex internal orchestration is the first and most vital step in unraveling procrastination. We are not dealing with mere lack of willpower, but with a sophisticated system of rewards and aversions operating at a deep level. Recognizing that our brain is tricking us into seeking immediate pleasure at the expense of future well-being is liberating. This clarity allows us to stop blaming ourselves and instead develop conscious strategies to renegotiate this internal battle, redirect impulses, and re-educate neural patterns toward action. But behind this complex neural dance that pushes us toward immediate gratification lies an even more intricate labyrinth, our emotions. It is not just a matter of brain circuits or dopamine imbalance. Often, procrastination is a silent cry from our psyche, a defense mechanism designed to protect us from feelings we consider unbearable. It manifests as a shadow cast over our tasks, turning them into emotional monsters, paralyzing us before we even take the first step, diverting us toward the illusory comfort of inaction. The most prominent of these emotional shadows is, without a doubt, the fear of failure. The idea of not meeting expectations, making mistakes, being judged, or feeling inadequate can be overwhelming. It is not just about failing the task itself, but about what that failure may imply for our self-image, for others' perception of us, or for our internal sense of worth. We prefer to delay, to preserve the illusion that we are capable because we haven't yet been tested, rather than face the real possibility that our efforts might not be enough. It becomes a form of self-defense against the pain of disappointment, a shield against the vulnerability that comes with trying. Closely linked to the fear of failure is perfectionism, a double-edged sword that, while capable of driving excellence, most often prevents us from even beginning. The relentless pursuit of an impeccable result, the absolutely perfect version of a task, raises the bar to an unreachable height. Performance anxiety emerges when the pressure to be flawless becomes paralyzing, turning every small step into a minefield of potential mistakes. It is the inner voice whispering, "If it can't be perfect, better not try." A cycle of delay and frustration is created. For many, procrastination is also fueled by the insidious imposter syndrome, the persistent feeling that we are a fraud, that at any moment we will be exposed, despite all evidence of competence. This syndrome, combined with latent low self-esteem, leads us to avoid tasks that might reveal our supposed shortcomings. Why risk an important project if, deep down, we believe we are not good enough for it? Avoidance becomes a way to protect our fragile self-image, delaying the inevitable confrontation with what we fear might be our true, inadequate essence. These emotional shadows intertwine, creating a complex web that traps us in inertia. Procrastination, in this context, is not a sign of laziness, but a symptom of a deeper internal conflict. It is our emotional system attempting to protect us from pain, shame, anxiety, or disappointment. Although the immediate relief of postponing a task may feel like refuge, in the long term, avoidance only amplifies the cycle of guilt, stress, and the painful sense of stagnation. Understanding these emotional roots is the first crucial step in untangling the knots that hold us back and beginning to rewrite our personal story of action and achievement. But beyond the deep emotional shadows that paralyze us, there is an even more treacherous labyrinth: the mind's traps, the cognitive distortions we invent to justify our inaction. It's as if our brain, a master of self-preservation, created elaborate narratives to keep us in the zone of least resistance, validating procrastination as a logical choice rather than a symptom of internal conflict. These justifications are not mere excuses. They are sophisticated mechanisms our psyche uses to relieve dissonance, making us believe that delaying is the most sensible decision. They sell us the illusion of control, when in reality, we are being controlled by our own thought patterns. One of the most insidious traps is the belief that I work better under pressure. How many times have we convinced ourselves that the adrenaline of the last minute is essential to our productivity? Although a spike of stress can indeed push us into action, it rarely results in our best performance or highest quality. This mentality only perpetuates a vicious cycle. We delay, stress rises, we rush to finish, temporary relief reinforces the habit. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that traps us in peaks of anxiety and mediocre output. Another common distortion is the belief in needing inspiration or the perfect moment. I'm not inspired. It's not the right time to start this project. This search for ideal conditions is usually an elaborate avoidance strategy. The truth is, inspiration rarely visits while we wait. It is often a byproduct of action, a result of engaging with the task. Starting, even with tiny steps, can ignite creativity and motivation, exposing the illusion that we need a particular mental state to begin. The fallacy of "I still have time" haunts us as well. With dangerous optimism, we overestimate our future discipline and underestimate the real time required for tasks. We imagine a tomorrow with more energy, more focus, fewer interruptions. But this tomorrow rarely exists. We push important tasks aside in favor of what feels urgent, until the important becomes urgent, generating stress and the sensation of always racing against the clock. It is a dangerous game with our perception of time, one that always results in more pressure and less quality of life. Recognizing these mental traps is the first crucial step to dismantling them. They are seductive whispers that try to keep us safe. But paradoxically, they prevent us from growing and achieving our potential. Challenging the belief that you work better under pressure, starting tasks without inspiration, and confronting the illusion of unlimited time. These are acts of courage and self-awareness. By exposing these self-deceptions, we begin rewriting our mental script, replacing the narrative of inaction with intentional action. It is a journey toward regaining control over our thoughts and, consequently, our lives, breaking free from the vicious cycle of justified procrastination. While emotional shadows and cognitive traps paralyze us from within, the external environment also acts as a cunning enemy, feeding procrastination. Our surroundings are not neutral. They are full of triggers that sabotage action. One of the clearest examples is digital overload. We are constantly bombarded by notifications, emails, and social media, each one demanding immediate attention. This flood of stimuli shatters our focus, fragments our time, and keeps us in a constant state of reactivity, making it nearly impossible to concentrate on meaningful tasks, and consequently, we delay them. Beyond digital noise, the nature of the tasks themselves can be a trigger. We often face grand goals or complex projects that feel overwhelming. The lack of clarity on the first steps, the absence of a detailed plan, or the perception of massive effort paralyzes us. Instead of breaking the problem into manageable pieces, the mind fixates on the enormity of the whole, generating helplessness and anxiety. This distorted perception turns a challenge into an impossible mountain, pushing us to delay the start, waiting for inspiration or energy that rarely arrives. And what about our physical space? A disorganized, chaotic environment is not just a reflection of an overloaded mind. It is a catalyst for procrastination. Stacks of papers, items out of place, a cluttered digital desktop. All of this creates disorder that makes focus harder. Searching for a document or needing to tidy your desk before starting consumes precious mental energy. This visible clutter acts as a constant reminder of unfinished tasks, increasing resistance to starting anything new or important. Decision fatigue is another insidious enemy. In the modern world, we face an overwhelming number of choices daily. What to eat, what to wear, what emails to prioritize, or which method to use, what to do first. Every small decision consumes a piece of our willpower. By the end of the day, our ability to make decisions for complex tasks is exhausted. It is in this drained state that procrastination thrives. We opt for inaction or the easiest, least demanding task, simply because we no longer have the mental energy for the real challenge. Thus, procrastination is not only an internal battle against fears or distorted thoughts, it is also a fight against the environment we've built. This hostile environment, with its digital overload, poorly defined tasks, disorganization, and decision fatigue, creates a vicious cycle that feeds our insecurities and inertia. Understanding these external triggers is the first step to disarming them. It is not enough to re-educate the mind. We must restructure our space and workflow to create an environment that favors action rather than sabotages it. Only then can we begin to break the chains of delay. These internal and external triggers, which we explored earlier, do not act in isolation. They are the initial pieces of a much more complex and insidious mechanism, the vicious cycle of self-sabotage, especially manifested through procrastination. Imagine it as a gear that, once activated, spins relentlessly, pulling us downward with every rotation. Everything begins with a trigger, the sight of a challenging task, a tight deadline that creates anxiety, or the anticipation of future effort. This is the spark that ignites the flame of internal resistance. Faced with this trigger, our brain's immediate response, trying to protect us from discomfort or hard work, is avoidance. Instead of facing the task, we seek escape routes, aimlessly browsing the internet, checking social media over and over, dedicating ourselves to easier, less important tasks that give us a false sense of control. This momentary detour provides an illusory, temporary relief, a tiny dopamine spike, a pause in anxiety that makes us feel good for a few seconds, validating the decision to delay. It is the sweet poison that tricks us into believing we've chosen the right path. But the relief is short-lived. The sandcastle collapses quickly. Soon after, we are hit by an avalanche of negative feelings. Guilt for not doing what we should. Rising stress as deadlines approach. A deep sense of frustration and inadequacy. The task didn't disappear. It only became larger, more urgent, and now carries a heavier emotional weight. The time we lost cannot be recovered, and the energy we could have used to act is now consumed by rumination and self-criticism, slowly eroding our self-esteem. This cycle feeds itself cruelly. The guilt and stress generated by previous procrastination turn into new triggers for future avoidance. When a similar task appears, our brain, already conditioned, immediately associates it with those negative emotions, reinforcing the tendency to procrastinate again. A behavioral pattern is created, hard to break, where each avoidance not only delays task completion, but strengthens the neural pathways that lead us to procrastinate in the future. The real cost is not just unfinished work, It is the erosion of our confidence and the loss of opportunities. It is a vicious cycle that imprisons us, stealing our energy, our peace of mind, and ultimately, our potential. The price of procrastination is not limited to incomplete tasks. It manifests as delayed dreams, unachieved goals, and a persistent sense of stagnation. To free ourselves, we must understand that interrupting this pattern is not about brute force or sheer willpower, but about strategic intelligence. We must identify the entry points of the cycle, the moments where we can choose a different path, building habits that push us forward instead of paralyzing us. It is an invitation to change, to break the invisible chains that hold us back. To truly break the chains of procrastination and the self-sabotage cycle we've uncovered, we need a practical method, a path. This is where Habit Master comes in, and its first pillar is fundamental: uncovering your own patterns through awareness and acceptance. This is not a journey of guilt or self-criticism, but a compassionate exploration of your inner world. Imagine becoming a detective of your own mind, observing without judgment, trying to understand the origins and mechanics of your most deeply rooted behaviors. This is the starting point for any meaningful, lasting change. The first practical step is to identify your personal triggers. Think about the exact moment when procrastination shows up. Is it when you open your email inbox? When you look at that complex task on your calendar? Or maybe it is an internal feeling, insecurity, a whisper saying, "You're not good enough." These triggers can be external, like a messy environment or constant notifications, or internal, like fatigue, anxiety, or boredom. Write them down. Don't confront them yet, just recognize them. Notice how they appear, their intensity, and where you feel them in your body. This calm observation is the key to disarming their power. Once the trigger is identified, the next layer to explore is your emotional responses and the cognitive distortions that appear. When you face a trigger, what emotion dominates? Fear, frustration, overwhelm, and how does your mind react? Do you catch yourself thinking, "This is impossible. I'll never finish this. Better save it for later"? These are cognitive distortions, irrational thoughts that twist reality and fuel procrastination. Catastrophizing, all-or-nothing thinking, excessive personalization. These are the invisible architects of your inertia. Understanding that these thoughts are just mental constructions, not truth, is incredibly powerful. True mastery begins when you learn to accept these patterns without judgment. Acceptance does not mean resignation or approval. It simply means acknowledging reality. It is saying, "Okay, I'm feeling afraid right now. My mind is telling me this task is huge. I see these patterns in myself." This acceptance is liberating. It removes the power of self-criticism and opens the door for objective analysis. And if you've ever found yourself in one of these self-sabotage cycles, feeling stuck, leave a like on this video and share in the comments what your biggest procrastination trigger is. Your insight might help others feel less alone and begin their own journey of self-awareness. This is the first and most crucial step of Habit Master, building a deep awareness and unconditional acceptance of your current state. Without this solid foundation, any attempt at change is like building a castle on sand. By uncovering your own patterns, the triggers that push you, the emotions that paralyze you, and the thoughts that deceive you, you are not just identifying problems. You are gaining the knowledge needed to rewrite your script. You are empowering yourself with the clarity that precedes transformation, preparing the ground for the action strategies that will come next. The journey to mastering your habits begins here, with the courage to look within. The journey of self-discovery, as it reveals the tangled patterns of self-sabotage and the triggers that hold us back, is only the prelude to true transformation. Knowing the enemy is crucial, but to defeat it, we need an arsenal of strategies that allow us not only to resist, but to advance. This is where the beauty and power of small beginnings emerge, the art of dismantling the intimidation of colossal tasks and turning them into manageable steps. The key is not in a burst of motivation, which is temporary, but in building momentum, as inevitable as sunrise, step by step, victory by victory. Imagine for a moment the barrier that rises when we think about a gigantic task. Writing a book, running a marathon, learning a new language. The mind, overwhelmed, becomes paralyzed before even starting. That is why the 2-minute rule shines as a beacon of simplicity and effectiveness. It invites us to begin any new habit for no more than 2 minutes. Want to read more? Read just 1 page. Want to exercise? Put on your workout clothes and stretch lightly. The goal is not to finish the task, but to break inertia, to show yourself that you are capable of starting. This tiny action, almost insignificant, is the spark that sets much bigger things in motion. This philosophy deepens into the idea of breaking tasks into pieces so small that they become almost impossible to ignore. If your goal is to organize the house, start by organizing just 1 drawer. If it's writing a report, start with the first sentence. By fragmenting what seems monumental into atomic pieces of action, we remove the weight of the burden and replace overwhelm with a sense of control. Each small completed piece is not only physical progress, but also a psychological victory, building confidence and creating a virtuous cycle of progress and engagement. It is on this fertile ground that atomic habits flourish, showing that the most significant changes arise from countless tiny improvements, not from a grand revolution, but from constant, subtle evolution. Every time you commit to these small beginnings and execute them, even for mere seconds, you are voting for the person you want to become. These micro-victories accumulate, not like drops in the ocean, but like bricks forming an inner fortress, strengthening your identity and your belief in your ability to act and persist. The momentum that emerges from this is truly inevitable. It is no longer about brute willpower, which depletes, but about a well-lubricated system where starting an action naturally leads to the next. You are no longer fighting procrastination. You are building a progress engine, fueled by small, consistent wins. This is the art of turning potential into tangible reality, breaking the cycle of inaction, and finally aligning your actions with your deepest aspirations. Every small step, no matter how trivial it seems, is an act of courage, a declaration of intention, and a move toward the most complete, capable version of yourself. So far, we've explored the power of shaping an environment that pulls you toward action, and the magic of small beginnings that build unstoppable momentum. But the battle against procrastination isn't fought only in the external world or in the dimension of time. The most crucial, and often the most neglected, arena is your own mind. It is in your inner dialogue, and the voices echoing inside your head, that many of your deepest resistances take shape and solidify. And it is here that we must dive if we want truly lasting transformation. The first step to reprogramming this mental landscape is to challenge the negative self-talk that paralyzes you. How many times has an inner voice whispered, "You're not good enough. This is too hard. You're going to fail." Even before you start, these narratives are powerful saboteurs. Cognitive reframing teaches us to question these voices. What evidence supports this thought? Is this a fact, or just an interpretation? Am I predicting the future or catastrophizing? When we dismantle the flawed logic behind these thoughts, space opens for a more realistic and empowering perspective, transforming "I can't" into "I can at least try." But silencing the critic is not enough. We must cultivate a new voice. This is where self-compassion becomes a powerful antidote to the whip of guilt and shame that procrastination often brings. Treat yourself with the same kindness, understanding, and patience you would offer to a friend who is struggling. Recognize that procrastination is a universal human experience, not a moral failure. When you forgive yourself for past stumbles and encourage yourself with empathy, you release energy that was trapped in the cycle of self-deprecation, turning action into an act of care, not punishment. Another powerful tool for reprogramming your mind is visualizing your future self. Instead of focusing solely on the unpleasant task in front of you, project yourself into the future and feel the satisfaction, relief, and pride of having completed what needed to be done. Imagine the positive impact this action will have on your life, on your health, on your finances, on your relationships, on your sense of identity. This emotional connection to your future self builds a bridge between now and later, turning obligation into desire. It becomes like sending a gift to yourself in the future, knowing the reward will be worth the present effort. Finally, the long-term sustainability of any behavior change depends on intrinsic motivation. While external triggers and rewards can kickstart the process, it is alignment with your deeper values and sense of purpose that keeps you moving. Ask yourself, why does this truly matter to me? How does this action connect with the person I want to be? When the action itself becomes rewarding because it reflects who you are and what you value, procrastination loses its power. You're no longer fighting against yourself. You're constructing the life you want, one decision, one action, one habit at a time. After restructuring your inner dialogue and cultivating self-compassion, the next crucial step in our journey against procrastination is the objective validation of your progress. The mind can deceive us, minimizing achievements or exaggerating failures, but data doesn't lie. It's essential to step out of the realm of subjective feelings and anchor yourself in tangible metrics that prove, without a shadow of doubt, that you are moving forward, even in small steps. This shift from the mental to the measurable provides a solid foundation for sustaining motivation. It transforms hope into certainty and intention into visible results, a key pillar for meaningful, lasting life change. One of the most powerful tools for this objective validation is the accountability partner. Finding someone, a friend, colleague, or mentor, who shares your goals or agrees to monitor your progress can be a game changer. This person is not merely an overseer, but a witness, a supporter, and a mirror reflecting your evolution. Simply knowing that you must report your progress to someone dramatically increases the likelihood of taking action, adding a layer of social commitment to your internal commitment. It makes quitting less tempting and persistence more natural. Along with external accountability, setting realistic rewards and celebrating small wins are essential to reinforcing the brain's reward circuitry. This isn't about huge rewards for massive achievements, but small treats and acknowledgments for each milestone achieved. Finished a difficult task? Enjoy an episode of your favorite show. Completed a week of consistent effort? Treat yourself to a special coffee or a relaxing moment. These rewards should not sabotage your progress. They should act as tangible congratulations, injecting a dose of dopamine that associates pleasure with positive action. Celebrating these small victories is a deeply psychological mechanism. It not only gives an immediate burst of satisfaction, but also reprograms your brain to associate effort and discipline with positive, gratifying outcomes. Each time you acknowledge and celebrate a small step forward, no matter how small, you strengthen the neural pathways that support the new habit, making it more automatic and less dependent on sheer willpower. It creates a virtuous cycle: action, progress, celebration, motivation, more action. So adopt progress tracking as your guide. Record your advancements, even the tiny ones. Use apps, journals, calendars, or simple check marks. Visualize your growing graph and see how each point represents a conscious choice, a step toward the future you that you are intentionally building. By monitoring objectively and celebrating sincerely each small victory, You not only keep your motivation alive, you also solidify the foundation of a life where procrastination becomes a relic of the past and continuous progress becomes the new normal. The journey of self-transformation, no matter how well planned, is not linear. There will be days when motivation wavers, when the temptation of old habits returns with overwhelming strength. It is crucial to understand that a relapse does not erase all the progress you've made. Rather, it offers a valuable opportunity for learning. Identifying your triggers, whether stress, boredom, or exhaustion, and developing a contingency plan becomes just as important as the habit itself. See relapse not as failure, but as feedback, a data point revealing more about you and about the conditions that must be adjusted. Building resilience is the art of falling and getting back up, not with anger or self-criticism, but with self-compassion and determination. When a setback happens, instead of sinking into guilt, pause, breathe, analyze. What led you here? What can this moment teach you? Use this moment to reinforce your commitment by remembering the original why that pushed you to start. True strength does not lie in never failing. It lies in the courage to keep going, to forgive yourself, and to recalibrate your path, turning every obstacle into a springboard for even greater growth. Integrating these new habits means going beyond mere repetition and making them a natural part of who you are. It is no longer about "I need to do this," but "I am the kind of person who does this." Healthy eating stops being a diet, it becomes a lifestyle. Discipline stops being a task, it becomes a trait. This internalization is what solidifies real change, making it less of a conscious effort and more of a natural expression of your new self. This is the freedom that comes from taking control of your choices, and therefore, of your life, dissolving the shadow of procrastination. The freedom of action is a constant state of choosing and rechoosing, of adapting and evolving. There is no final point where procrastination disappears forever. Instead, there's a daily practice of maintenance, gentle vigilance, and celebration of progress. Each day is a new opportunity to strengthen the neural pathways that lead to productivity and well-being, and weaken the pathways that lead to inertia. This is a lifelong commitment to the most powerful, present, and fulfilled version of yourself. You hold in your hands the power to shape your destiny, to transcend self-imposed limitations, and to live a life full of purpose and achievement. Procrastination no longer has to be the anchor holding you back. Free yourself. Start now. Feel the urgency of living fully, of building the future you deserve, one day, one habit, one action at a time. If this content resonated with you and inspired you to act, subscribe to the channel for more transformational insights and leave your like. Share this video with someone who also needs this freedom. Your next step begins here.